Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Radha Madhava. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jayam Vishupad Paramahamsa Pri Vrajagacharya Stotra Satya Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Niskan Dibiti Founder Charya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Nande All gladies to the assembled devotees. All gladies to the assembled devotees. All gladies to Sri Guru. All gladies to Sri Prabhupada Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Taksharan Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jita Palakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanditam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanidhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, Let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhaviti naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and a loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, whose praise with transcendental songs becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Uttamasloka charitam Sakarabandarishi Nishreyasaya lokasya Dhanyam Swasyanam Mahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, is the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Om Sarabhyaya Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vatanam Pangam Nangayate Girim Yadkripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yatkripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our morning class. We are continuing Canto number 1, chapter 9. You have no. Vyavahita Pritana Mukham Nirikshya Swajana Vadhad Vimukhasya Dosha Buddhya Kumatim Aharad Atma Vidyayas Vidyaya Yash Charana Ratihi Paramasya Tasya Me Astu. Vyavahita Pritana Mukham Nirikshya Swajana Vadhad vimukasya dosha buddhya.
Sajana badhat vimukasya dosha buddhya.
Matim maharad atma vidyayas yash.
Kumatim aharad atma vidyayash.
Charanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Charanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Vyavahita pritana mukham nirikshya.
Vyavahita pitana mukham niriksha.
Swajana vadhad vimukasya doshamud buddhya.
Sajana badhat vimukasya dosha buddhya.
Kumatim maharad atma yas.
Kumatim maharat atma vidaya.
Charanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Charanarati paramasya tasya me astu.
Vyavahita pritana mukham niriksha.
Vyavohita pitana mukham niriksha.
Svajana vasya dosha buddhya.
Sajana badhat vimukasya dosha buddhya.
Kumatim aharad atma vidyayas yas.
Kumatim maharat atma vidaya.
Sharanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Charanarati paramasya tasya me astu. Vyavahita pitana mukham niriksha.
Vyavahita pritana mukham niriksha.
Sajana badhat vimukasya dosha buddha.
Swajanasya dosha buddhya.
Kumatim aharat atma vidaya.
Kumatim maharad atma vidyaya yash.
Charanarati paramasya tasya me astu.
Charanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Vyavahita pritana mukham nirikshya.
Vyavahita pritana mukham niriksha.
Sajana vadhad vimukhasya dosha buddhya.
Svajana vadad vimukasya dosha buddhya.
Kumatim maharat atma vidyaya.
Kumatim maharad atma vidyayas yas.
Charanarati paramasya tasya mestu.
Saranarati paramasya tasya mestu. Vyavahita.
Vyavahita.
Standing at a distance.
Standing at a distance.
Pritana.
Pitana.
Soldiers.
Soldiers.
Mukham.
Mukham.
Faces.
Faces.
Looking upon.
Are looking
Kinsmen.
kinsmen.
But from the act of killing.
From the act of killing.
Vimukasya.
Vimukasya.
One who is reluctant.
On who is reluctant.
Dosha buddhya.
Dosha buddha.
By polluted intelligence.
By polluted intelligence.
Kumatim.
Kumatim.
Poor fund of knowledge.
Poor fund of knowledge.
Aharat.
Aharat.
Eradicated.
Eradicated.
Atma vidyaya.
Atma vidyaya.
By transcendental knowledge.
By transcendental knowledge.
Yaha. He who. Charana.
Charana.
To the feet.
To the feet.
Ratihi.
Ratihi.
Attraction.
Attraction.
Paramasya.
Paramasya.
To the Supreme.
The Supreme.
Tasya.
Tasya.
For him.
For him.
May.
May.
My.
My.
Astu.
Astu.
Let there be. Huh?
Let there be.
Let there be. Yeah. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Raghava Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Kindly repeat after me. when Arjuna was seemingly polluted
When Arjuna was seemingly polluted
by ignorance,
by ignorance,
upon observing
observing
the soldiers and commanders
the soldiers and commanders
before him on the battlefield,
before him on the battlefield,
the Lord eradicated
the Lord eradicated
his ignorance
his ignorance
by delivering
by delivering
transcendental knowledge.
transcendental knowledge.
May his lotus feet
May his
always remain
always remain
the object of my attraction.
the object of my attention.
Report. The kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads on both parties, like Drona, Bhīṣma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsman on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but as a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said that here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Apparently, Arjuna's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted, conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul, and to reestablish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. End of purport. Translation again. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Hmm. So this is, of course, direct reference Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was temporarily confused about his duty and responsibility. And of course, Prabhupada and Acharyas mentioned that although Arjuna is a very elevated personality, pure devotee, Krishna somehow to present the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, not only to Arjuna but for the whole world. So not easy to understand why, just like in this case also, Yudhishthira Maharaj, also pure devotee, but put in a situation where he became somewhat, somewhat like Arjuna, morose, uh, and feeling that he was responsible for the killing of all so many people um, in the battle of Kurukshetra. And that we read a little earlier, that was the arrangement of the Lord so that different purposes. One, that grandfather Bhismadeva could speak and quite extensively as well in the Mahabharata. Actually, there are different sections, just like that whole exchange between Krishna and Arjuna that makes up the Bhagavad Gita. There are other instructions given by, for example, Vidura, and that's called Vidura is part of what is meant to be one of the books, actually, part of the curriculum for uh, the Department of, what is it, Faculty of Politics. Yeah, Viduraniti, and also these instructions uh, by grandfather Bhismadeva also have been put in um, in a book form. So these are different literatures are especially well on a helpful, but especially just I just opened the book Gita, and actually it's uh, Granta, isn't it? Uh, competing with Hollywood and Bollywood. Um, it is all actually um, having the opposite effect, of course, on the population means very much polluting the minds of people, because the subject matter, the content of such discourses are totally mundane, and generally also connected with basically the four sinful activities in society, and even promoting those as well. So that's why uh, the subject matter that is uh, there in the Shastra uh, is the subject matter that we should be more focused on, and it's not only um, dealing with spiritual subject matters, but also um, subject matters that in relation to our daily lives, etc., like that. So here, um, grandfather Bhīṣmadeva is because he was witnessing, um, isn't it, before the battle of Kurukshetra started, when Arjuna requested Krishna to take his chariot in between the armies, then that whole dialogue uh, took place. But I don't know how people could hear. It's like there were millions of people, and there was no loudspeaker set up like in a big pandal or something. Uh, of course, they had, anyways, um, whoever was close enough, but somehow, uh, even without necessarily hearing, uh, we were, I think, just reading in the previous verse how simply by the presence of Krishna on the chariot, that was um, everyone benefited from having darshan of the Lord. Uh, and I guess those who could hear also benefited from the instructions given by Lord Krishna. So in the verse, actually, it mentions, Prabhupada translates as, when Arjuna was seemingly polluted. So uh, it means it was the arrangement of Krishna that he became temporarily kind of, you could say, in a daze. Yeah. In the purport also, Prabhupada mentions how um, there's this is part of, we could say, material knowledge, uh, how, and also part of the culture that existed at that time, that is an integral part of Vedic culture, that if there is going to be a war, which is a last resort, because so many efforts were made to actually prevent this war to take place. But it was inevitable. But the war was uh, fought in a place that we could say the minimum casualties means only those who are fighting uh, away from citizens, which is, of course, not the case in modern day wars. So that means that there's Vedic culture is very deeply rooted in that even in times of war, there's a place, there's a time, and there are systems or ways to fight. All of these are actually part of what one learns. It's part of the what is it? Um, the art, yeah, the art of warfare. Uh, Fighting only in the daytime, and fighting with someone who is your equal. Uh, there's that story of I think it was Krishna along with Bhīṣma and Arjuna. They once got dressed as brahmanas to go and see who? To go and challenge, I think, Jarasandha. And so even though Jarasandha was of not 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 so dharmic, I mean he was against Krishna. He I mean even somebody like Ravana, isn't it? Ravana, when some of his family members